Over the next 2 chapters, we're going to take a look at remote voice tracking. It comes in 2 parts, the remote edit server and the remote voice tracking software. Now, remote voice tracking is an exciting new concept from P Squared that takes the basic idea of voice tracking introduced in Myriad and expands the functionality to allow authorized users to review your Myriad station log, edit the log, and record voice tracks into the log remotely from the comfort of their own homes, or more likely from sister stations around the world as well. Before we can start on the basics of remote voice tracking, it's worth just quickly covering what we mean by voice tracking in the first place. Voice tracking is a commonly used term to describe the practice of pre-recording specific voice links into the scheduled station output to be played automatically by your station's playout system. In Myriad specifically, voice tracking is achieved using the full seg editor mode on the log screen. When voice tracking, Myriad will play back the last few seconds of the previous track and allow you to record your voice link over the top. You then control when the next track starts, and hence you can record a voice track in exactly the same way as you would do it live. Remote voice tracking works in exactly the same way, but with the exception of instead of sitting in the studio, you can remotely voice track from any PC in the world with a network connection to your radio station, a copy of the remote voice tracking software, and a microphone. That's all you need. It comes in 2 applications, which we'll look at in 2 separate chapters: remote edit server and remote voice tracking software. So the first thing you need to do is you need to decide which PC is going to have the remote edit server software installed. The reason the choice is important is that the PC must fulfill the following criteria in order to run remote edit server effectively. The PC needs to have access to the Myriad network. It also needs to have access to the real world via the web. The PC needs to be reasonably fast, as it's going to be generating and compressing audio files as part of its job. And the PC needs to act as a bridge between the Myriad network and the real world without compromising the Myriad network. This one is normally done with 2 network cards and bridging between them. You can find out more about that from your Microsoft Windows documentation. If the PC that you have in mind has all of these factors, then it's a good candidate for the remote edit server. In most stations, the Myriad server or an Office server is the ideal platform for running remote edit server, but it will depend on the system specification and the level of loading that you've already got going on that server. So, remote edit server itself, it acts as a gateway between your Myriad system and the remote voice tracking software, ensuring that the remote user never actually comes in contact with your Myriad system. The remote edit server is also used to set up the options for all remote voice tracking clients that connect into it. This way you can dictate what quality and compression the recorded voice links are when they are submitted. The remote edit server software is licensed by P Squared, and you can only run 1 copy of the software per purchased license. Remote edit server will only support 1 connection at a time, so you cannot have more than 1 user remote voice tracking at the same time. Now, you normally would connect to it using a static IP address provided by your ISP, but you could also connect to it using a VPN. Now, the VPN, Virtual Private Network, allows users in the real world to log into your corporate network as if they were in your building, but instead of being physically at your site, their connection is tunneled through the web. VPNs, they're great because if a user logs into your network via VPN, they are effectively on your network and as such can access the resources within your network that you allow them. This means that once a remote voice tracking client has logged on to your network via VPN, they can connect into the remote edit server directly using the remote edit server name. There are a few caveats though which are outlined in the manual, so do check out the manual on the P Squared website. So less talking and more doing. Now how we can download and install the system software. So we go to the P Squared website at www.psquared.net, and we go to products here, and we're going to go to Myriad, and we're going to go down to Myriad support. We're going to select version 3.0. At the moment, we are going to go to the remote voice tracking, and then we've got the manual here, which you can download and read, and then we've got 2 versions here, two full releases and the beta release version. We're actually going to download the beta release version 3.0.34, and we'll download that here just by clicking on the link. Now here you get asked for your username and password, which you would have been sent as part of your email license when it came down. So you can use the same one again. So you type that in. And then you have the chance to save the file. So we're just going to save the file there. And then once that's downloaded, we can close that, and then we have our download here. So we can double click on the MSI and we can click on Run. Click on Next here. Have a read through of the license. Once you're happy, select I accept the terms in the license agreement. Click on Next. Ask us where we'd like to install it. Click on Next here and then click on Install, and it will go away and install the application for us. And then once that's done, just click on Finish, and we are closed off there. And because this is the first time that we've run it, it's going to ask us to license it. So you should have received an email from P-Squared. If you haven't, then you can send them an email to licenses@psquared.net and request a license for the remote edit server. For the remote itself, that doesn't need a license. For remote edit server, that does. So once you've received your email, you're ready to go ahead and launch the software and license it in the same way as you would license Myriad, which we've dealt with in a previous module here in the Learning Center. So the application will load up and we need to add in our license details. So I shall just do that, and then we'll move to using the application itself. So once you've licensed your software, you get to this settings menu, network, audio and other. You've got the command port 6940, the data port 6941. Those are the details that you'll need to stick into your firewall port forwarding, if that's the way that you're going to connect to the system. Also ticked here, close connection when idle for more than 5 minutes. That's a good idea, especially if you've got several presenters wanting to use remote voice tracking and someone accidentally keeps the connection open. That will close the connection, enabling the next presenter to log on, as remote voice tracking only allows one person to be connected at a time. Keep a local cache of audio files. Now this speeds up the download and the ability for the remote presenter to listen to the last 10 seconds of the track and the first 10 seconds of the next one. So you specify a folder there. You've also ticked here to allow the client to clear the server cache as well. So again, the remote voice tracking user, the presenter in their remote studio, has the ability to clear the server cache. Into audio, here's where you choose the download format and the upload format. So here you choose the audio format that the remote user will hear when previewing the segs. And by default, it's set to Windows Media Audio. And then you have an upload format, which is the audio format that links recorded by the remote user will be uploaded at. You have the ability to change over here the format. Also, normalize links to 75% is ticked by default, so anything that gets uploaded up will get normalized to 75%. You also have an ability in version 3.0.34 of the remote edit server of using an alternate cart range for remotely recorded links. In Myriad itself, you can set a range where any segedit voice links go, and you can tick this, and that will change the area of the cart range used for anything that you've done remotely. If you just want to use the ones set by Myriad by default, whether you're local or remote, then just leave that one unticked. And then in the other category here, we've got the security option of allowing users with blank passwords to log in. That one's ticked by default. You can store the logs, so this is who's logged in, who's logged out, time. and you've also got the option here to minimize down to the system tray to get this out of the way of the main desktop on your server or whichever computer you've decided to run Remote Edit Server on. And that's up to you. It's ticked by default. So we're happy with those. We can click on OK, and that will continue to load the Remote Edit Server. And once that's logged in there, the firewall has blocked the feature of the program, so we want to unblock. Okay, so the Remote Edit Server is up and running. We can see here that no user is currently logged in. There's no time, and this is the event history here. The menus along the top, File, we have Reset Connection, so if someone's had a bit of a problem and they phone up the station, you can just go to File, Reset Connection, and that will boot everyone out. Exit as well, Tools, Precede Audio Cache, and Clear Audio Cache. So in the audio settings, when we first launched the application, we said to download everything in that Windows Media Audio format, and we also set a directory where the audio cache would be. And if you wanted to, you could precede that audio cache, so you could basically create versions of everything on your audio wall in that format, so it doesn't need to do it as and when it's requested, it's already there. So you have the ability to precede the audio cache. If you've gone in and you've changed perhaps the download format of the tracks that you're going to hear the last 10 seconds and the first 10 seconds, you need to clear the audio cache and then precede the audio cache again. So that's what you do there. Settings is your normal settings menu where you find the audio wall, station database settings, P-squared directory settings for the user logins, Myriad settings, program settings, and your license details. So if you go back to program settings, that brings up the menu that we were on before where we chose what download format and also whether or not to normalize the links. So we can go in there and just tick that one. So that's where you get back to if you wanted to change those settings. Also, while we're here in the P-squared directory settings, we need to actually make sure that we turn on the ability for users to log in remotely and edit the log. And so we need to do that in the directory. So we'll just click on directory here, and it's actually set in security groups. Now, we've only got one security group here, but you may have an administrators, you may have a presenters, you may also have a remote presenters group. So if we had that and we wanted to set it differently, we can go into all users, and it's in Myriad version 3, and it's one of the permissions down here in station database permissions. You see this option here, can remotely edit the scheduled log. So you need to ensure that that is ticked for the user group that your users that are logging into are members of. So make sure that one is ticked, else it won't work for you. And so we're okay with that. We can click on OK. And that is about it, really. That's all you need to know for the moment. And that will just minimize down and it will go into the system tray and we are set. We could go into station database settings, and if there was a variety of different databases, then we choose whichever one we want. We've only got the one, Hot FM, so we just choose that, and we're all okay with that. That'll bring up our normal database settings, which we know are fine. So we'll just click on OK. That gets rid of that. And then when we're ready, we can just minimize that, and that's the Remote Edit Server working.